The alien market was loud and full of color. Different creatures walked in every direction. Tall ones, short ones, some with scales, others with fur. They were buying and selling things. Food, tools, weapons, even living beings. In the corner of the market where no one wanted to go, there was a small figure lying in the dirt. She was just a girl, thin and shaking. Her skin was pale blue, covered in dust and small bruises. She had no clothes, just a metal collar around her neck with one word scratched into it: unwanted. People passed by her without looking. Some laughed. Some made rude comments. Others just acted like she didn't exist. Vendors shouted prices for shiny machines and rare animals. But the girl was not for sale. She had been for sale once, many times actually, but no one bought her. Now the sellers just left her there, like trash no one wanted. Her eyes were strange, big and silver. They stared at nothing. Her arms were wrapped around her knees as she sat in the dust. She didn't cry, she didn't move. She just waited, maybe for the end, maybe for a miracle. Then one day something changed. A new visitor walked into the market. He was human, tall and strong, with brown skin and black eyes that missed nothing. His name was Jace. He was a trader from Earth, here to buy old ship parts and maybe a few tools. He didn't care much for living things, especially not slaves. Jace moved through the market quickly. He wasn't here for fun. He wanted to get his parts and leave. But as he walked past the corner of the market, his eye caught something, a small movement, a flicker of light off silver eyes. He turned his head and stopped. There she was, sitting in the dirt, not even flinching as a vendor dropped a bag near her. For a long moment, he just stood there. He didn't understand why he was staring. She looked broken. But there was something else, too. Something deep in those silver eyes, something that called out to him. "Don't waste your time," a vendor nearby said. Laughing, "That thing's been here for weeks. Won't talk, won't eat. Useless." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Is she for sale?" The vendor snorted. "Free if you want her." "I'd rather not have her scaring off my real customers." Jace didn't answer right away. He walked closer, kneeling down slowly. The girl didn't move. She just looked at him with those strange, quiet eyes. "What happened to you?" he whispered. Still, she said nothing. Her lips were dry, her face empty. But there was no fear in her, only silence. That silence felt heavier than any scream. He opened his bag and took out a soft cloak. Carefully, gently, he wrapped it around her. She didn't stop him. Didn't resist. For the first time, she blinked slowly, like she couldn't believe someone was touching her kindly. Jace stood up and turned to the vendor. "I'm taking her." The vendor waved his hand. "Good luck, human. She's more trouble than she's worth." Jace helped the girl to her feet. She stood slowly, weakly, as if her legs had forgotten how to work. But she followed him, one small step at a time. The cloak covered her now, hiding the bruises, hiding the pain, at least a little. As they walked through the market, people stared. Some whispered. Others laughed. "Look at that human taking the trash home," one alien said. Jace ignored them all. The girl didn't look around. She kept her eyes on the ground, but inside something had changed. No one had ever looked at her the way he did. Not with pity, not with disgust, but with something else. Something gentle, something human. They reached Jace's ship, a small cargo hauler named Orion's Hope. He helped her inside, sat her on a soft chair. She didn't speak, not even a sound. He handed her a bottle of clean water. She looked at it like it was a weapon. Then slowly, carefully, she took a sip. Then another. And then she drank the whole thing. Jace watched her, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why had no one helped her? That night, as the ship prepared to take off, Jace checked on her again. She was curled up in the chair, wrapped in the cloak, sleeping for the first time. She didn't look like trash, she looked like a child, a lost soul given one more chance. But something strange caught Jace's eye. Next to the girl's hand, drawn lightly on the metal floor, was a glowing shape. It looked like a symbol, but one he didn't recognize. It was written with her finger, glowing softly in the dark. Jace stared at it, heart beating faster. This girl wasn't ordinary. Something about her was different, and he had just brought her onto his ship. She was supposed to be worthless, but something told Jace this was only the beginning. The stars outside the ship window blinked slowly. Inside the ship it was quiet. Only the soft hum of the engine filled the silence. Jace sat in the cockpit staring at the controls, but his mind was not on the ship. It was on the strange girl sleeping in the other room. She hadn't said a word, not when he carried her inside, not when he gave her food or water, not even when he asked her simple questions. She just looked at him with those silver eyes, watching, waiting, silent. Jace didn't know what to think. She was not like any alien he had seen before. No horns, no tails, no sharp teeth, just smooth pale blue skin, silver eyes, and a quiet sadness that filled the room like smoke. He stood up and walked to the back room. She was still there, sitting on the small bed he made for her. The cloak he had wrapped around her now lay beside her. She wore a soft shirt and pants from the supply room. Loose and warm, she didn't speak, but she didn't try to run either. When Jace stepped in, she turned her head slowly. She blinked once, then looked back down at her hands. They were small and thin, resting quietly in her lap. Jace sat down on the floor, keeping his distance. "He didn't want to scare her. You comfortable?" he asked softly. No reply. "That food all right?" Still nothing. She turned to look at him again, eyes calm. Jace noticed something strange. Her face wasn't blank. It was listening, feeling, thinking, just not speaking. "You got a name?" He tried again. Nothing. "Mind if I give you one?" She tilted her head slightly. No answer, but not a no either. Jace smiled a little. "All right, until you tell me otherwise, I'm calling you Starlet." Her eyes blinked again, a slow reaction. She didn't smile, but something in her eyes shimmered just for a second. That night, Jace went to sleep on the ship's floor mat. He left the door open, just in case she needed anything. He expected silence, maybe even a runaway. But in the middle of the night, he heard something, not footsteps, not crying, a soft sound like scratching. He sat up slowly, heart alert. The girl was kneeling near the hallway wall. Her finger was glowing, leaving behind soft blue light as she drew on the metal wall. She didn't see him watching. She was focused, calm. She was drawing symbols, strange ones, circles, lines, marks that twisted and glowed. Jace didn't move. He had seen her draw before, but that was just one symbol on the floor. This was different. This looked like writing, he whispered. "Starlet." She paused, her glowing finger still touching the wall. Then slowly she turned her head toward him. Jace didn't see fear. He didn't see anger. He saw deep sadness in her silver eyes and something more, something old. She stood up, backed away from the wall, and sat quietly in the corner. The light faded from her finger, but the symbols stayed, glowing softly like stars. Jace got up and stepped closer. The symbols pulsed with energy, warm but not hot. He scanned them with his datapad. No matches in any known language. Not Galactic Common, not trade script, not any alien code. He looked at her again. "What is this?" Still no answer, but she raised her hand slowly, reached out and touched his arm. Just 2 fingers, light, soft like a feather. Suddenly, his mind exploded with light for one moment. He couldn't see the room. He saw memories, but they weren't his, they were hers. He saw a green world, skies like crystal. He saw children laughing, families glowing with the same light she had. He saw soldiers, fire, a cage, screams, and finally, cold silence, alone in the dirt. Forgotten, then it was gone. Jace dropped to his knees, gasping for air. The girl, Starlet, was back in the corner, hugging her knees. She didn't cry, but her hands were shaking. Jace understood now. She wasn't just some lost girl. She came from a place that had been wiped out. She had powers, memories that could be shared, stories that could be told without words. And someone had tried to erase her like trash. He walked over slowly, sat beside her again. "I saw it," he said quietly. "I saw your world." She looked at him, her eyes softer now. He reached out and gently took her hand. "You're not broken, Starlet," he said. "You're just scared." She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. She let him hold her hand for a little while. And in that small moment, something new began. But far, far away, deep in space, a black ship woke up. An old scanner beeped just once and sent a silent signal. A target had been found, coordinates locked, and the hunt had begun. The ship drifted quietly through deep space. Stars moved slowly outside the window like tiny cold fires. Inside the ship, everything was still, except for the glowing symbols on the wall. They hadn't faded. They pulsed gently with blue light. Like they were breathing, Jace stood in front of them. Arms crossed, eyes full of questions. He had never seen anything like this. Not in all his years of trading, smuggling, or fixing old ships. Starlet sat on the floor a few feet away. She was calm, watching him. Her silver eyes reflected the light from her drawings. She didn't speak, but her silence no longer felt empty. It felt like she was listening to something deeper, something inside him. Jace lifted his datapad again, scanning the symbols. No match, the screen said. No known language, no record, no data. He frowned and looked at her. You're not just some lost girl, are you? He said softly. You're something else. Starlet slowly got up and walked toward him. Barefoot and quiet, she stood beside him and touched one of the glowing marks. It flashed once, then dimmed. Her finger moved to another symbol, and it lit up bright, then faded. She was talking, without words. Jace could feel it. What are you trying to say? He asked. She turned to him, then slowly, carefully, reached out and touched his arm. Jace didn't resist. He remembered the last time. The rush of memories, the images, the pain. This time it was different. He didn't fall. Instead, his mind opened like a door, and through that door her story began to play. He saw her world again. Lush forests, floating cities made of glass and wind. Her people could speak with light, write emotions into the air. They didn't fight, didn't lie. They shared everything through symbols that glowed. Symbols like the ones on the wall. But then came the darkness. Black ships from another system. Tall creatures in red armor who feared the light. They didn't understand her people. They destroyed what they didn't understand. He saw fire fall from the sky, children screaming, the ground shaking. He saw Starlet, much younger, carried away in a metal cage, her powers sealed, her family gone, sold from planet to planet until she was dumped in that alien market, thrown away like broken tech. The memory faded. Jace blinked fast, chest tight. Starlet looked at him, her hand still on his arm. Her eyes glowed softly, not from power, but from deep sadness. Jace knelt down in front of her. Your people could talk with light, he whispered. That's what this is. He pointed to the wall. She nodded. Just once, he stared at the symbols again. They killed your whole world, he said. She looked down, her hands folding into each other. A silent yes. Jace stood up slowly. You're not a slave, he said. You're a survivor. Starlet looked up at him, a small spark in her eyes. Not hope yet, but something close. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed from the ship's control room. Warning, Jace rushed to the cockpit. Starlet close behind, the screen blinked red. Unregistered ship detected. No response to communication. Jace stared at the map. A black dot was moving fast, too fast, straight toward them. It had no name, no ID. Just speed and silence. He looked at Starlet. Someone's following you, he said. She didn't move, but her eyes went cold. Jace turned to the controls. We can't fight, not yet. But we can hide. He activated the ship's stealth mode. Engines dropping to quiet hum. The lights dimmed, systems lowered. Outside, they became just another rock in space. The black dot stopped near them, but didn't move closer. For 20 long minutes, Jace and Starlet sat in silence, watching, waiting. Then the black ship slowly turned and drifted away. It hadn't seen them, or maybe it didn't want to attack yet. Jace let out a breath, but Starlet didn't relax. She walked back to her symbols on the wall. One by one, she touched them again. But this time they changed. New symbols appeared, glowing with sharper light, stronger, faster strokes. Jace didn't know what they meant, but somehow he could feel it. They weren't just memories now. They were warnings. Starlet stood tall beside them. The light on her skin made her look like a ghost. A ghost with a message no one could read except maybe him, whoever they are, Jace said. They're not done with you. Starlet turned to him. She pointed to a new symbol, then slowly placed her glowing finger on his chest. The light spread across his shirt. Warm, gentle, alive, Jace gasped. Inside his mind, one word appeared clear, sharp, powerful. A word made of memory and emotion. A word in her language, a word that meant protector. Jace stood in silence. His heart beat faster. He looked at her and nodded. All right, he said. If I'm your protector, then let's find out who's chasing you. But far away in the dark void between systems, the black ship turned again. This time, toward Earth. It had found her trail, and it would not stop. The stars were quiet outside the window, but inside Jace's ship, the tension was loud. He sat in the cockpit, eyes locked on the radar. The black ship was gone, for now. But he knew what he had seen, and he knew what it meant. Someone had found her. Someone wanted her back, and it wasn't to help her. It was to erase her. Behind him, Starlet stood with her hands behind her back. She had changed, even in just a few days. Her back was straighter, her eyes more focused. She still didn't speak with her voice, but she had begun to speak with her light. Every night she wrote more symbols on the wall, and slowly Jace had learned to feel them. Not understand, not fully, but feel. Some meant safety, some meant memory. And some were warnings. Jace pointed at the screen. "They're tracking you." Starlet didn't flinch. She walked over to the glowing wall and drew a symbol. It flashed red, a single circle with jagged edges. Jace could feel it. "Danger. Can you fight them?" he asked. She looked at him, then down, then slowly shook her head. "Not yet." Jace nodded and stood. "Then we run." He entered the coordinates of a hidden planet, Deimos 9. It wasn't on most maps, but Jace had been there before. A quiet world with caves and storms. No cities, no ports, no patrols. It was the perfect place to hide. The ship turned, and the stars stretched as they jumped into warp. The ride was rough. Older ships didn't like long jumps. Jace gritted his teeth as the engine rattled. Starlet held onto the wall, her eyes closed finally. They dropped out of warp near a large blue planet covered in clouds. The air was breathable, the signal quiet. No ships in sight. They landed in a narrow canyon, surrounded by cliffs and fog. Jace powered down everything, engine, signals, lights. "We're staying dark," he said. "No one finds us here." For the next 2 days, they made a small shelter inside a rocky cave. Jace set up solar panels and cooked simple meals. Starlet helped quietly, handing tools, setting up lights, watching the sky at night. She drew symbols inside the cave, not just on walls, but in the air. Lines of light floated gently, fading with time. Jace watched, amazed. It was like watching someone dream while awake. On the 3rd day, something changed. Starlet stood outside the cave, eyes closed. The wind blew through her hair, but she didn't move. Jace stepped outside. Confused. "Everything okay?" he asked. She slowly raised her hand and the wind stopped. The birds went quiet. The cave lights flickered. Then she pointed to the sky and far above through the clouds. Jace saw it, a dark shape floating silently. "They found us," he whispered. He rushed inside and turned on the scanner. One ship, no ID, no message, just a slow descent. He grabbed his blaster. He didn't want to use it, but he would. Starlet came inside, calm but alert. She touched the glowing word on the cave wall. "Protect." The enemy ship landed quietly across the canyon. Then black armored figures stepped out. Tall, silent, and armed, they didn't knock, they didn't talk. They simply walked toward the cave. Jace blocked the entrance. His blaster ready, he looked back at Starlet. "Get behind me." But she didn't move. Instead, she stepped beside him, her hands glowing softly. "What are you doing?" he asked. She looked at him and placed one glowing hand on his chest. And suddenly Jace saw it, her power. He didn't just see memories this time. He felt her energy flow through him. The soldiers came closer. Jace aimed, but Starlet raised her hands first. The air shimmered around her like a shield. The light in her palms grew brighter, then exploded outward in a silent wave. The soldiers stopped mid-step, their eyes widened, and then they dropped their weapons one by one. They fell to their knees, gasping. Not in pain, but in fear. They were seeing something. Jace didn't know what. He couldn't see it himself. But Starlet was showing them something they couldn't handle. Something deep, something terrible. A few seconds later, the soldiers turned and ran, silent and terrified. They scrambled back to their ship and took off without firing a shot. Jace stood frozen. He turned to Starlet, who now sat on the cave floor, weak, eyes half closed. Her energy was drained, her hands dim. He rushed to her and caught her before she fell. Hey, stay with me," he whispered. She looked up, tired but alive. She had protected them both. As he carried her to the bedroll, he whispered, "I think it's time we stopped hiding." Far across the galaxy, a signal was sent. A report marked "subject located but not captured." And in a shadowed room, a voice said coldly, "Send everything, she must not survive." The cave was still. Jace sat beside Starlet as she slept, her chest rising and falling slowly. Her hands, once glowing with power, now lay quiet on the blanket. Outside, the wind whispered between the canyon walls, but inside everything was silent. He replayed the moment in his mind, how she had stood between him and the soldiers, how she didn't move, didn't fight the way soldiers do, but somehow she made them all fall back in fear. What had they seen? What had she shown them? He didn't know, but whatever it was, it had worked. And it had left her completely drained. Jace leaned back, his blaster resting across his lap. He hadn't fired a single shot. And yet they had won, no blood, no bodies. Just fear, pure fear in the enemy's eyes. Later, Starlet opened her eyes, slow and careful. Jace looked at her and smiled gently. "Hey, you're awake." She blinked once, then twice, and tried to sit up. He helped her, steadying her back. "You saved us," he whispered. She looked down, as if unsure how to react. Then slowly she raised her hand and wrote a glowing word in the air. "Danger," it said. Jace nodded. "Yeah, I know. They're not done yet." He stood up and walked to the cave entrance. The canyon outside looked empty again, but the sky above was no longer friendly. Something darker had started. They had poked a nest, and now the nest was stirring. That evening, while Jace was checking the ship's power cells, he felt a strange energy in the air. He turned quickly. Starlet was standing outside again, her feet bare against the cold stone. But she wasn't drawing symbols. She was staring into the night sky, silent. Her hands slowly lifted, and the air around her shimmered. "Starlet," Jace said softly. She turned to him with glowing eyes, not weak, but calm and control. "I need to know," he said. Walking closer, "What are you really?" She didn't answer with words. She stepped toward him, took his hand, and once again, shared, Jace saw a memory. Clear and sharp, not like before. Not just pictures, this time it was a vision. A temple made of silver stone, her people standing in rows. Light shining from their bodies, he saw a child, Starlet, standing in the center, surrounded by older beings. They marked her with glowing symbols on her skin. She was not just one of them, she was chosen. A memory keeper, a light bearer, one of only a few who could show truth without sound, who could break a person's mind with a single memory if needed. The vision faded. Jace stood there, stunned. "You're not just special," he said slowly. "You were their last line of defense." Starlet nodded softly, but there was pain in her eyes. She pointed up toward the stars and drew a symbol that meant hunt. "They're scared of you," Jace whispered. "They want to erase you." Suddenly, his communicator beeped. He grabbed it, pressed a button. The screen lit up. An emergency signal, not from the enemy, but from a trader outpost near the outer rim. One of Jace's old contacts. The message was short, broken by static. "Human ship. Girl with silver eyes, bounty. Massive reward. Everyone hunting." Jace's blood ran cold. A bounty, big enough to make anyone turn against them. Even old friends. He turned to Starlet. "We can't stay here," he said. "They're telling the whole galaxy about you." She didn't cry, didn't panic. Instead, she drew one more symbol. Shield. That night, Jace made a decision. He packed supplies, charged the ship, and prepared for flight. But before they left, Starlet stood once more in the cave. She touched the stone wall and slowly, gently, wrote a circle of light inside the circle. She placed a final glowing symbol. Home. Jace watched. Heart heavy, this cave had been their shelter. Now they were leaving it behind. As they flew away from Demos 9, Jace looked at her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then reached out and touched the controls. Blue light flowed from her fingers into the dashboard. Suddenly, the ship's scanners grew sharper, faster. Its shields turned stronger, smoother. Its navigation system updated itself. Paths to safer places began to appear. Jace stared in shock. "You upgraded the ship?" Starlet smiled softly. "Just a little. You're full of surprises," he said. She reached for the air and wrote one word in glowing light. "Together," he smiled back. "Yeah," he said. Together, but in a black room far away. A commander watched their signal on a screen. He turned to his soldiers and said one word, "Destroy." And a fleet of ships began to move. Space was never truly silent. Not inside a ship. The hum of engines, the soft clicks of data screens, and the quiet breathing of the people inside made up its own kind of music. But today that music sounded heavier. Like something was coming, something big. Jace sat in the pilot's seat, staring at a blinking red signal on the side monitor. It was an open broadcast, one sent across many systems. A bounty message. He played the audio again, heart tight. Unidentified alien female, silver eyes, energy-based threat. Reward, 12 million credits alive, 6 million dead. He didn't move for a long time. 12 million credits, that was enough to buy a city, a fleet, even a planet. Now everyone, from bounty hunters to pirates to old enemies, would come looking. Not for gold, not for weapons, but for Starlet. She sat in the corner of the room, legs crossed, eyes closed. She had learned how to rest now, how to focus, breathe, even meditate. But Jace could tell she already knew. Her kind didn't need to hear with ears. She felt danger in the air like a storm. He walked over and sat beside her. "They put a price on you," he said. Starlet opened her eyes slowly. She didn't look surprised. She reached out and drew one glowing symbol on the floor. "Hunted," Jace gave a small, tired laugh. "You're getting better at that." She looked at him, waiting. "We need to disappear again," he said. "But not hide like before this time. We move smart." He had a plan, risky, but maybe their only chance. There was an old station on the edge of a dying planet. A secret trading hub where no laws reached. It was loud, dirty, dangerous. But Jace had a contact there, someone who owed him a favor. As they flew toward the station, Jace watched the stars around them. Too many eyes now, too many threats. Every signal they sent could be tracked. Every safe place was now a trap. They landed under a fake name, used an old ID. The station smelled like oil, smoke, and old food. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through narrow halls. Some stared, some ignored. Jace kept Starlet close. Her hood pulled over her silver eyes. They reached a dark bar at the far end of the station. Inside it was noisy, full of broken screens and flashing lights. In the corner sat a woman with metal arms and a red eye. Her name was Tressa. She had once saved Jace from a crash and never let him forget it. "You owe me fuel for life," she said as he sat down. "Right," Jace nodded. "But I need more than fuel this time." He told her about Starlet. Part of it, at least. He left out the powers, the glowing symbols, the soldiers that ran away in fear. He just said, "They want her dead, and I need a way to keep her alive." Tressa looked at Starlet, then back at Jace. "That's the one they're all talking about," she whispered. "The girl with eyes like starlight. They say she can burn your mind with just a thought." Jace didn't reply. He just watched Tressa as she leaned back in her chair. "I can help," she said finally. "But it's going to cost you." "I don't have credits," Jace said. "But I have something better." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small cube. Inside it was data, Starlet's light symbols, recorded carefully. Not full memories, just messages. Messages written in a forgotten language of emotion. Tressa touched the cube. Her red eye blinked as she read the light. She sat still for a long time. When she looked up, her voice was soft. "This isn't a weapon," she said. "This is art." "She's not a danger," Jace said. "She's a message." From a world that was erased, Tressa nodded. "I can scramble your ship's ID. I can give you a stealth drive, but after this, I'm out. If anyone finds out I helped you, I'm dead too. Deal?" Jace said. Later, back on the ship as Tressa's upgrades installed, Starlet sat by the window. Watching the broken planet below, she didn't speak, but she drew a symbol in the fog on the glass. "Change." Jace stood beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, then pointed up, toward the stars, toward the ships that were surely still coming. "We'll be ready," Jace said. "You're not alone anymore." But deep in space, a new fleet had gathered. Not bounty hunters, not just mercenaries, but warships. The kind that came when someone wasn't just hunted, but feared. And in the lead ship, a voice said, "The girl must not reach the inner systems. Destroy the human, recover the subject, or erase them both, back on the ship." Starlet sat in silence, her hand glowing softly, and in her light a new word formed, a word Jace didn't recognize. But it made the ship's AI whisper one single warning: power awakening. The stars ahead looked calm, but Jace knew what was waiting beyond them. Not peace, not home, but warships, big ones coming fast. He gripped the pilot controls, trying to keep steady. The ship hummed under his fingers. Stronger now, thanks to Tressa's upgrades. But still, it wasn't made for battle. They weren't warriors. They were just two runaways, one human, one mystery, and a galaxy that wanted them gone. Starlet sat behind him, quiet as always. But something was different tonight. Her eyes glowed brighter. Her skin shimmered gently like moonlight. The air around her felt warm, alive, not dangerous, just deep. Like standing next to a sleeping storm, Jace turned to her. "They're blocking the path to Earth," he said. "If we go forward, they'll try to stop us." Starlet stood up slowly. She walked to the front of the ship, then looked at him and nodded. "You're not afraid?" he asked. She reached out and touched his chest. A small light sparkled between her fingers and his shirt. It formed a glowing word, trust. Jace smiled softly. All right, he said, I trust you. The radar beeped. The enemy fleet was close now. 13 ships, all armed, all waiting. They didn't send warnings, they didn't ask questions. They just prepared to fire. Jace looked at Starlet. Whatever you're going to do, now's the time. She stepped forward, her hands glowing blue. She closed her eyes and lifted her arms. Slowly, softly, her feet rose off the floor. She floated weightless as light poured from her body. The ship's lights flickered, but the engine stayed strong. Jace watched in silence as the air filled with her light, and then she spoke. Not with her mouth, not with words, but with pure memory. The light from her skin expanded and reached the ship's walls. Then through the ship's hull out into space, toward the enemy fleet in seconds. The closest ships began to slow down. Their weapons stopped charging. The crews on board froze, then visions began. Each soldier saw her world. The beautiful floating cities, the peaceful people. The attack, the fire, the cages, they felt it like they lived it. They saw her as a child, alone, confused. Dragged across the stars, they saw the marketplace, the dirt, the collar that said unwanted, and they saw Jace, reaching out, not to hurt, not to sell, but to help one by one. The enemy ships shut down their weapons. Pilots cried, soldiers dropped to their knees. One captain whispered, "What have we done?" But not all of them changed. One warship stayed locked on target. Its commander, a man with cold eyes and no mercy, raised his hand. "Fire," he said. A red light flashed on the screen. A missile shot forward, straight toward their ship. Jace gasped. Starlet opened her eyes. And for the first time she spoke. "No," she said. Her voice echoed like wind and music mixed together. She raised one hand and pointed at the missile. The light around her spun fast. Like a shield of stars, the missile stopped. Just stopped in mid-space, then slowly. Turned around, it flew back, faster than before. Straight into the warship that launched it. The explosion lit the stars. The shockwave shook the ship, but didn't break it. And then silence, no more attacks, no more threats. Starlet floated back down to the floor, her glow fading slowly. She was tired, but strong, alive, and free. Jace walked to her and caught her in his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped them?" She looked up at him, her silver eyes calm, then touched his chest one more time. This time, the word she wrote in light was different. Not trust, not protect, not home, but belong. Jace smiled through tears. "Yeah," he said, "you belong. Right here." They changed course. The path to Earth was open now. No ships followed. No alarms chased them. As they drifted toward a new life, Starlet sat beside Jace, her fingers gently glowing as she drew new symbols on the glass window. Not warnings, not fear, but hope. And somewhere across the galaxy, a message echoed through ancient frequencies. One voice, one line. She is not the last. She is the first to rise again.